The secret that prevented me from ending my life that Tuesday afternoon was incredibly simple. I was stood looking into my eyes in the mirror of that library toilet. Tears were streaming down my face onto a notepad that I actually had in the sink. And next to it was a bottle of pills. Well, in the notepad I was intending to leave a farewell note, which I quickly realised would only come across as blame for what had happened. I'd already brought myself back from the brink of suicide twice before, but as I looked myself in the eyes on that day, something just felt different. And I said, I am responsible for everything. And this immediate sense of relief flowed through me. All of the negativity seemed to flow away down the sink, and what replaced it was this sense of growth. By blaming, I was actually eliminating vital life lessons and opportunities for growth and self-improvement. Each of those situations or the interactions could have been a point for self-improvement. And on that day, I chose not to end my life. I chose to end the blame instead, and at that point I also remembered a time where it had served me before. A life of continuous self-improvement stemmed from some pretty horrendous bullying at school. Every day I was sat in a toilet cubicle at break times and lunch times, and this just went on for years. And it wasn't until a time where I saw my brother experiencing some bullying that I was able to eliminate my own. In standing up to his bullies, much to his disgust, I was able to ask myself why I was able to stand up for him but not myself. I took responsibility. Rather than blaming them, I took responsibility for it continuing and blamed myself instead. And as soon as I did this, I grew as a person, and I also raised the standards that I expected of myself, and then just took immediate action. And what it did was it ended the bullying immediately. I feel like I've got a lot to thank the years of bullying for. There's my growth and development that expanded from there. The standards that I expected for myself and my life became very, very high. I stopped focusing on wanting things to be easier, and really I then put my attention on becoming better. I knew that in some things I wouldn't be the most talented, but if I was willing to put in the work and do what others weren't, then I could actually bridge that gap, that talent gap, and it meant that I had to get comfortable with pain. And when I got comfortable with pain, everything changed. My ordinary world was someone else's extraordinary world. From then, I had success and opportunity at every turn. Strength and fitness became a daily part of my life. I studied nutrition, health, disease, supplements, and even as a young boy, I was studying mindset, psychology, and meditation. To test everything, I then applied to become a Royal Marines Commando. Basic training was what can only be described as 30 weeks of hell. At week 27, I took a tragic fall, unfortunately, from about 30 foot. And that left me so injured that I couldn't continue, so I had to leave. Eventually, my physical and mental pain recovered, and I decided to put myself through that hell a second time. But I couldn't pick up where I left off. I had to go right back to the beginning. This time though, I earned my Green Beret, becoming a Royal Marines Commando. But this time I went a little bit further and I earned the title of King's Badgeman for being all-round best recruit. This allowed me to literally travel the world, and I also served during the conflict in Iraq. After leaving the Marines, I became an extremely successful personal trainer and health coach, and this was down really to my added ability to undertake the client's nutrition as well as the mindset. Television became my next venture. My passion, enthusiasm and knowledge was evident, and TV was the perfect medium to help more people and to take my business to the next level. I spent a good number of years on ITV This Morning, on Channel 5 and also the Bio channel. I'd been in virtually every women's magazine, I'd been on the cover of men's health magazines, in newspapers, and I was also working very regularly with celebrities. And like I said, this success was my ordinary, but inside me I felt like something just wasn't quite right. The niggle inside me was, this was it. This was the maximum I could ever be. This was the maximum I could ever earn, because I was already working from 6 a.m. in the morning, walking out of the gym at 10 p.m. at night, and this was 7 days a week. Success saw myself and my young family move to Dubai. I'd actually been sought after by one of the richest families in the world. I'd uprooted everyone with the promise of everything they could ever want. Once I got there, a contract just never materialised, despite asking over and over again. And what followed was a feeling of insecurity and uncertainty. And all this was made worse by the death of one of the more prominent members of the family. And naturally, their family took some time out back in the UK, and of course, they wanted me to go with them and continue looking after their well-being. The problem was, we'd sold everything. We had no house, no car, literally nowhere to go and nowhere to live. We couldn't stay in Dubai, and we couldn't agree on a solution back in the UK. So we took a last-minute flight back to the UK, and I remember being stood at Woking train station with nothing but 5 suitcases and nowhere to go. My kids' faces staring back at me. They were literally oblivious to the guilt that I had, and the fact that I just had no idea what to do next. My then wife looked like she'd not slept for days, and she most likely hadn't, and she wasn't about to. We had no money, no house, no car, no work. So I did the only thing that I actually could do at the time, and that was to call my mum 15 miles away. It wasn't long before major cracks appeared. Naturally, living like that, it just wasn't fair. So we had to move away, finding yet more family to support us, while I spent every waking moment trying to rebuild. Personal training had changed, and I wasn't going to be anywhere long enough to be able to build that client base. But I still had this niggle, or that fire in my belly, that I was just destined for so much more. Something unique, a special gift inside me, and I felt my purpose was to express that. It was no longer this ember, it was literally burning inside me. Working on boot camps was actually my saving grace. It provided me with money to be able to rebuild our lives. And of course, the money was important, but that just wasn't my driver. I loved being in front of people, sharing my unique ethos, showing my passion, and also increasing my network. Then on a boot camp in the southwest, I saw her. The person that I'd seen in my mind for so many years, and I just didn't want the boot camp to end. We spent every moment we could walking and talking together. She made it to my thoughts when she wasn't around, and she made me smile instantly. It was just this massive and instantaneous connection. I valued her opinion, I trusted her advice that she gave me, but nothing happened. And on the final day, she left, and she never turned her head. And it would be 3 years before I saw her again. We were out of the fire, and the storm had, finally passed. We were living in Berkshire, and I was playing by the rules. Then came a phone call. It was my sister, and she was letting me know that although we hadn't been in contact with my dad for a number of years, that he had died. It was quite a difficult time because things were starting to look up and things were starting to improve, but there was an added piece of news, and that was that he wasn't who we thought he was. My mother knew, and I think my sister knew what was going on for a good number of years. And that piece of news was that my father was gay and always had been. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. What affected me was the fact that not who he was naturally. I'm very accepting of that. I have lots of friends who have been in exactly the same position. It wasn't that. It was that we didn't know who he was, and yeah, we had a fairly normal upbringing aside from the bullying, and he was kind of there and used to support us and help us, but it was the fact we didn't know who he was and who he really was, and he had a second life going on, aside from the family life. And this obviously is something that affected my mum quite heavily, and I can understand it's a very difficult thing to be able to overcome, but she stuck together. She stuck together through all of that for us, to give us that normal life. And what it shows is that someone can give up 30 years of their life, putting themselves to one side for the benefit of their children. And for that I will be eternally grateful. But what it was also a lesson in that I was able to forgive, and by forgiving, what it did was it released all of the pain from myself, but didn't release him from the cheating that he'd done for such a long period of time. So that was a really good lesson in forgiveness, and we actually came through it fairly quickly, all of us. This playing by the rules and living life according to society really sort of frustrated me and caused so many more failures along the way. I felt it was very limiting, and to others I was actually being perceived as selfish. Life as we're told it should be was made up. It was made up by people no smarter than you or I. But I felt like I could change it and influence it with this burning desire that I felt inside. It was this feeling of more, a uniqueness that I just had to share, and I couldn't control it. This is where it gets tricky. This thing, this force was pulling me one way, and my responsibilities and what my partner at the time perceived was right and what was just, like most of society, was pulling me backwards. Ultimately, this is what caused business failure after business failure. With the failure came more arguments about what I should do to become that success. There was comments of, you need to be like this person or that person, do what they're doing or behave like them, and all it did was just make it worse. I was being inauthentic, which meant that I couldn't keep it up. I was confused, and I lost who I was and what my message was. Year after year, it was the same old story. Big highs and even bigger lows. A regular comment from certain friends and family was, I just can't understand why you haven't made it yet. You're so good at what you do, and you're so passionate about what you do, and you have such an understanding of what you need to do. Why are you not there yet? One last ditch attempt at holding the family together saw us move to Cornwall. It was a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. It was very idyllic, stunning views, and when we viewed it, they told us that it had all of its services, including phone and internet. When I called them to get set up, I found out that there was no phone line and no internet into the property. Worse still, there was no mobile signal at the house, and there was no 4G, so when we were at home we were literally off the radar. It was 9 months like this. That's how long it took them to sort it out. My business was online, and it was still in the growth phase. It also relied on me being able to make calls, and I pretty much worked from home. So Cornish coffee shops with slow internet was the only answer. And I couldn't stay in each coffee shop all day long, so I had to move around all day, sometimes 3 or 4 different coffee shops. This also meant that social media videos and content was literally out of the question, and those 9 months took its toll on an already crumbling business and relationship. Once again, we had nothing. Then the knife struck hard, and I was told that I had to leave and that we were getting a divorce. Now, I wish that I could say that I was upset about losing my wife, but I wasn't. The truth is that had died a long time ago. Like so many, it was all for the kids, and because through all the years of having nothing and working so hard to give them what I felt they deserved, I was the most dedicated and present father. Some would say that money was the most important thing for them, but I would say that for a child, what I did for them was more valuable. I'd be the first one up in the morning after doing a little bit of work. When they came down from bed in the morning, I'd make their breakfast, make their lunches, do their hair, get them dressed and ready for school, drop them at school, and then I'd work all day. Much of the time I'd be the one to pick them up from school and bring them home, and I would dedicate the time then to be able to play with them. I was always present, and the phone was always away, and I was just there with them playing and doing whatever they wanted to do to make the most of this really valuable time. I'd get them ready for bed, I'd take them upstairs to bed, I'd brush their teeth, take them to bed, read them a story, and stay there until they drifted off to sleep. And that was pretty much an everyday cycle at that time. In a heartbeat, with those words, I'd lost all of it by at least half, and I was devastated. The house on my own was lovely. I mean, it was magic when they were there, when the girls were there, and extremely lonely when they weren't. The thing is, I knew absolutely no one in Cornwall. It was just me and work. Years of striving, pain and deprivation, and failure after failure. Success now very much in my rearview mirror. Inside me, it was really taking its toll. A chance encounter for work saw me able to get away for a week, and there she was again. The girl from 3 years ago. The connection was instantaneous. I mean, it was electric. Her eyes captivated me, and the feeling was just not of this world. The week mirrored that of the last one that we spent together, but so much more intense. It was like we'd never ever lost contact. I wanted to be with her every second of the day, and I left the week in love. Business was a never-ending struggle. Money became increasingly tight, but my girls always came first. So at the time, I had no choice but to go down to eating just one meal a day in the evening, literally to save money. This is what sparked actually an even greater interest in fasting than the method I'd already been using. I literally got shredded. I got stronger, I got faster, my energy soared, my aging slowed, aches and pains disappeared, and I was better able to deal with everyday life. Nevertheless, I couldn't sustain it any longer. The lack of friends, no family, no money, and a heart that was longing for someone saw me selling everything that I had, and I moved back to my mum. The contrast in my life at that time was incredible. On one side of the coin, I had no money, no car, I was sleeping on a bare mattress, I had debts placed into my name, I wasn't seeing my kids, I was losing even more friends and more family. I was forced to sign a divorce that was actually a lie. I had 2 Christmases without my girls, and I was depressed. I'd walk around seeing parents with their kids, and each time tears would literally run down my face, and the pain was just unbearable. On the other side of the coin, the side that everyone saw, was a sharply dressed man. This was the person that I just allowed people to see. I was a clean man, I was up every day, my nutrition was on point, I was at the gym every day, I was helping people in my program and on social media. I was still working on a business, I was on social media relentlessly. I was laughing and joking, and what people saw was someone who was really quite driven. What existed on both sides of the coin was a deep and expanding love for someone that I could give nothing to. I didn't have anything, but the only thing that I could give her was myself. it just wasn't enough. And it was ridiculous of me to think that it could actually be anything other than that. How was I able to get up each day through all this pain, suffering and adversity? My office was the library. It was free, but it actually became my prison. And it was there that I felt I was to end my pain by ending my life. And the pain also that I was bringing on others. It was there that I did end it, but not in the way that I planned. Taking responsibility, no blame, following what you know is your unique purpose, that thing that you've been ignoring, the flame that just won't go out that's inside you. Feeling the very reason that you're here and setting big goals, unique goals to you, is how you keep showing up every day through adversity and suffering. The reason I'm here is because I dream big dreams. I dream the kind of dreams that other people say aren't possible. I literally came from the other side of the tracks. Nothing has ever been handed to me, ever. If you dream big and you leave your ego at the door and you share your success with others, you can literally do anything. There will be people along the way who will say, you know, you're dreaming too big, it's not possible. Those things just can't happen. Don't allow anyone, friend, family, acquaintance, teachers, whoever it is, anyone to tell you that you can't dream for yourself and that what you dream for yourself is not possible. It is possible. You don't need to get to where I did. I've led my life so far to find out the mistakes and the solutions. My purpose is and always has been to help people have that internal inquiry, to be able to find their unique expression, find genuine happiness, transform their mind, and to also extend that now happy life by improving their health and live effortlessly in a body they love with confidence. So many people out there are miserable, angry, and bitter because they let their dreams get away from them, because they don't believe strongly enough in themselves and also what's possible. Don't allow that to happen. I can't encourage you enough to continue to think that things are possible and that your dreams can come true. And as it relates to finding your calling, it has to be linked to something that you're so passionate about and that you're willing to knock down walls and climb mountains and do the things that will at times be very painful. And you can only do that when there's a compelling underlying feeling that you have that this is something I'm willing to fight for, but it has to be something that you're passionate about and it has to be something that you're in love with. Otherwise, you're just not going to get over the first wall. And along the way, you're going to have to convince so many others to believe in you. The idea, the opportunity, the struggle, and the obstacles that, quite honestly, are going to come, which can only be overcome by this passion that you have that comes from within. So I say, dream big, then dream bigger, because you matter. One afternoon, while I was looking into her eyes and talking about the depth of our love, my soulmate and my best friend jokingly said, If you love me, you'd run to Scotland, pick a thistle and run your return back to me with it. Now, as crazy as that sounds, it stayed with me and it was lodged deeply in my heart. And then, one day, it all became clear. A run from Cornwall to Scotland and back is 1,000 miles, and true love can make you do anything. It's quite honestly the most powerful energy that we have. But 1,000 miles is also a metaphor for what I've been through in my life and the lessons that I've learned. Lessons that you need to learn so that you can become all that you were meant to be, and also to understand that you must get comfortable with pain. Pain is where growth happens.